Welcome to our first Legacy Parent Academy of the 2021 school year. My name is Christy Maker, Director of Counseling. We are so glad that you've joined us for this very important topic. This year, each of our Legacy Parent Academy events will be in webinar format in an hour in length and will be available online within a week. Also, a Spanish translation will be posted online. We invite those in attendance this evening to add their questions to the Q&A section. We will do our best to answer those that we can address this evening during our time. Questions and answers will also be posted on the Legacy Parent Academy page, including those that we are unable to answer this evening and those that require more research. This evening, we are joined by Ann McHale-Miller, Coordinator of Social Work Services, who will monitor the Q&A section and also serve as our timekeeper, and Ana Terrazas, who will provide the Spanish translation, which will be posted online in the coming days. I would like to take a moment to introduce our guest speakers, Leslie Meeks and Andrea Ortiz. Leslie Meeks is an experienced social worker who has served as the Director of Outpatient Services for West Park Springs Changes since 2018. She oversees the day-to-day operations and clinical interventions associated with specialized clinical programming for adults, children, and adolescents to treat and maintain their mental wellness. A proud fourth-generation graduate of Katy High School, Leslie has enjoyed a successful career in mental health, working primarily within the behavioral health programs. She is a dedicated clinical professional with a passion for advocacy, education, and support of mental wellness in our community. Andrea Ortiz has been with the West Park Springs since their opening 6 years ago and serves as the Director of Business Development. She has worked in mental health services for 8 years now and really enjoys helping families get their loved ones the care that they need and educating our community about their services. Andrea was born and raised in Fort Bend County and is a graduate of the University of Houston. She is a dedicated professional who enjoys advocating for those in need and has a devotion to assisting the youth in our community. Leslie and Andrea, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here.
All right. Are we ready to jump right in? Well, I appreciate that introduction from Christy and her team, and I am truly honored to be here tonight with all of the participants and attendees. I know we all have busy evenings, so getting a chance to log in and cover a subject like this is something to kind of take away from our time, but definitely worth speaking about, and I'm truly honored. Christy already mentioned as far as I am a proud Katy native. I am a fourth generation of a Katy High School graduate, so go Tigers. Mental health has been my professional go-to. It was not something I thought I was going to go into, but here I am, and I am loving every moment of it, and it is just a wonderful, wonderful field for me. So I am very passionate about speaking on behalf of topics that can be somewhat difficult for us as parents, as professionals, as community members. I am a parent myself to 3 young children, so those of you that are joining us, listen, I'm human as well. I may be a clinical person by nature, but I am also very well aware of this can be a very difficult topic. This can be a difficult thing to face with not only ourselves, but with our kiddos at home or with those that we may work with even. So even sometimes it's not our own children, it's children that we may work with in the community, coaches, teachers, different people, employers even at times. This can be a difficult topic to approach. So by all means, I am looking forward to getting a chance to talk about this with us. Before we get started, I like to break the ice a little bit for myself and for participants in regards to the elephant in the room for all of us, even though we're doing this via Zoom and we're doing this and kind of in a non-traditional way. Suicide is a difficult topic for many of us to accept, reflect, and acknowledge. The topic, the word, it has different impacts on each of us and our own experiences. I will share that I am not immune to suicide in regards to my own family, my own friend circles, my own patients. It's something that unfortunately has been a part of not only within my childhood, but also within my professional development, something that I have had to face as well in regards to my personal and my professional life. Everyone that's participating tonight, our panelists, our attendees, we all are free to have our own opinion on this matter and how it may be approached and addressed in our own personal environments. I'm hopeful that our experience tonight is meant to be informative and educational. This is simply a guide. This is simply, hopefully, a forum for people to gather a little bit more information, possibly learn techniques to open the conversation with your own family, loved ones, or just gain more awareness on what's going on with this topic itself. So starting off, as a parent, there's different ways to approach suicide prevention. That's a big term, but suicide prevention, we want to approach it in the same way that we do other safety or health issues for our children. By educating ourselves, we do learn what puts children, kids, teens, tweens, lots of different terms, at the greatest risk for suicide and what protects them most strongly. So I have in this presentation, focusing really on, there are so many more than just what's listed here, but thinking about yourself, thinking about our children, thinking about maybe students or any of our youth that we interact with. What are some of the things that impact them the most environmentally? And it may not be as profound as we think it is. It may not be something that's tangible, meaning that we can see it, we can hear it, it's something we look at, right? So with our children, is there things that are coming out in regards to some of the higher risk things that we often start to notice is there an engagement or interest in risky behaviors? That can be elopement, lying, cheating, stealing. I mean, anything and everything that seems out of the norm. Something that if you really think about it, something that if you got caught for it, okay, or if somebody caught that, hey, you're doing this, there would be a consequence, whether that consequence was given by a parent or guardian, or whether that consequence was going to be a result of law enforcement. It's a risky behavior because underlying there's a reason why people don't typically do it, right? Self-harm. Self-harm, it can come in many, many different forms. Many of us see through media or maybe through our own experiences that when we think of self-harm, we often think of cutting or self-injury resulting in some sort of form of injury. So scratches, scrapes, indentations. Sometimes with self-injury, what you may notice too is even self-piercings. That may seem a little odd, but in regards to it causes an immediate response. It causes an immediate response with pain inhibitors. Is there a drastic change in mood or behavior? We're going to talk about it a little later on in this presentation. What's kind of normal between just going through puberty and being a teen, tween, and what's not considered kind of a normal change in mood or behavior. Aggression, irritability, isolating. Right now, what we have all gone through in the last 6 months now, almost more now, I guess, but in the last 6 months, there's been a lot of isolation just in general. And so a lot of what we're seeing right now in response to our kiddos and those that are starting to, as the state opens up or as activities start opening up, there's kind of a natural response to, well, I've been isolated for so long, so now it's difficult to get out there and get open. But isolation in regards to literally being by themselves. It may not even be engaging on a phone or a technological device. It literally is isolation from family, friends, environmental factors. And then as well as another warning sign and risk can often be a sense of hopelessness or having no hope for the future. Additional risk factors are considered characteristics that may make it more likely, that's a key term, more likely that an individual will consider or attempt suicide. Risk factors and warning signs can provide helpful guideposts in determining which individuals may be considering suicide or in suicidal crisis. So again, looking at environmental factors as well as looking at situational factors. Have there been other attempts? Have there been relationship problems? That can be domestic relationships, school relationships, different community relationships, different involvement that they may be in. Or is there access to harmful means? Categorically, many of us start thinking about weapons when we think of harmful means. In my line of work, I have to be very considerate of harmful means can look like a simple shoelace, belt, anything that can really be used as a harmful means that can cause significant injury. Reduce blood flow, reduce ability to breathe, different factors. Has there been a recent death of a family member or a close friend? Regardless if that has been related to suicide or any sort of traumatic event, the grief and death itself can often create a risk factor for the experience of going through the grief process. Is there an underlying mental health condition? Has the child, has the teen, has the tween been exposed to bullying or any sort of traumatic experience in regards to relationships or anything that may have hindered their ability to build different lasting relationships, different experiences? In regards to, are there physical disabilities or illnesses that may be chronic or inhibiting? As we know, many of our youth that are going through those tween and teen ages often are already experiencing so many changes in their bodies and their chemical balances and in their experiences. What are other people able to do maybe that I'm not able to do? Really keeping focused on capabilities and abilities versus disabilities or things that can't be done. And then if there's any history or any current or interest in substance abuse. So the question here and in really having this talk tonight as well is in regards to, as a parent, as an involved party with tweens and teens, what can I do? What power, what superpower do any of us have that we are going to be able to protect this? As a parent, I find, and as a clinician I have found, it's important that we can teach and model healthy habits for mental health just as we do for physical health. Many of us often want, to see our youth eating right, getting exercise, taking care of themselves, learning to really engage in healthy relationships and really, whether we're teaching them manners or different cognitive issues, we want to make sure that they're very involved and engaged in their wellness. Mental wellness and psychiatric wellness is just as important. And as an adult, we want to model that importance as well. If and when our children see us approaching our own challenges and learning from our own mistakes in an open way, it does encourage them to understand that it's okay to struggle and that it's okay to learn from our experiences. I don't want to speak for any of my fellow panelists or any of my attendees out there this evening, but I can only imagine that many of us have experienced the stress of going back to school, right? And going through the decision making that was surrounding going back to school, and what mode were we going to do? And oh my gosh, for so long, so many places were closed that were going to be part of my child's wellness. And so then getting back on track, and stress and just overwhelming needs, and is it an adult issue versus my tweens issue? And when people, even of the tween and teen ages, see and sense that stress, they obviously either take it on and don't speak up or don't share. They often will tell me, as a clinical person, they will often tell me, oh, I didn't want to bother my parents with it. I know that they were stressed about this. I know that they were dealing with something else, so I didn't speak up. When we are vulnerable enough as adults to accept and to be able to acknowledge, hey, I'm not okay. I'm not feeling great. I'm stressed. I'm upset. I'm worried. I'm having my own concerns. That helps with that development and flexibility for others to see and to develop compassion. It also, when we're showing empathy, not only to our children and our youth, we're modeling that. And so when we show empathy, we often are going to evoke empathy back towards ourselves. Tweens and teens and kids alike all need to know that life is messy. It is not rainbows and sunshine every day. There is no guarantee of what the next day is going to bring. But again, when they can see that we as the adults are working through those difficult times and we're doing the best we can, it provides that gracious model for them to know, hey, it's okay to not be okay. It's important for parents to make sure that they're also checking in regularly. And this has to go beyond just the day-to-day tasks that many of our kiddos face. One of the worst, I think, habits that even for myself I fall into is saying, how was your day? And then I get it was okay. It was fine. Okay. And then we start talking about something else. Really ask and really get engaged with, what did you do today? How did you do this? How was that test that you had today? Or, hey, you mentioned yesterday. Really follow up and go beyond how just tasks are, and really try and get an idea and get invested in what's going on with our kiddos. It can help us invite deeper conversations. How was your day kind of becomes that just, I know mom or dad or my guardians, I know people in my life are just going to ask me, how was your day? If I say it's fine, they leave me alone. We want to invite those deeper conversations. If you have a child, or if you are aware of a child that has a history of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, self-harm, substance abuse, all those risk factors we just approached, really monitor them a little more closely. Don't have to be on top of them about it, but monitor it closely and consider involving professionals. Really be aware of sudden changes, be aware of differences, be aware of sometimes I'm fine really means I'm not, right? And without kind of questioning back and forth or making too much of it, but we want to be very aware of what our kiddos need. And if we've seen this happen before, if you've seen it happen before and you know what happened and you know kind of the steps and maybe the missteps that were taken, listen, we want to act a little differently when we see it coming at us again. When children hit puberty, as parents, right? Nobody knows. We don't get an instruction manual, okay? There are changes in their body and brain that do lead to behavioral changes. That's probably the biggest conversation I have as a professional with parents, working with children and adolescents, is some of this stuff. Listen, I'm an adult. I don't remember what it was like. I don't remember the challenges that I put my own parents through. I remember the moodiness. I remember things like that. But again, we want to be aware of the behavioral changes and that there is a normal range. There is just that not feeling good. I'm growing. My chemicals are, my chemical balance is changing. Things are just kind of shifting. And oftentimes, because we're just not comfortable talking about the uncomfortable stuff. Okay, so whether it's puberty related, body related, dare I say it has to do with relationships, or if it's having to do with different things, that they're just like, how do I even approach an adult about this? It's often the mechanism to push people away than to invite them into that conversation. So then, as I work with many adolescents in peer-to-peer groups, the worst thing we can do in peer-to-peer groups is learn from each other, and yet we're all unaware of the facts and the needs and the things like that. If you, as a parent or guardian or an involved adult in a child's life, if you notice indications of hopelessness or worthlessness, it may be withdrawal from friends and activities or suicidal thinking, that behavior should alert you. It doesn't necessarily raise the red flag that we're calling 911, we're calling somebody's got to come do something about this, but you want to be aware. You want to be very engaged in knowing that that is going on and be relatable to what's going on. One of the biggest things for myself professionally, and even as a parent sometimes, that we are challenged with, we know our child best. We are our child's best advocate, okay? But sometimes we don't know the right thing to do. We don't know what is going to help. We don't know what's out there. We don't know when people start talking therapists or counselors, or people start talking about a program such as what I do. People don't know what that looks like or feels like if you haven't experienced it yet. Your child doesn't necessarily know what it looks like or what it feels like, or if they need it or if they want it. It can often be intimidating. It can feel punitive. It can be made to feel that something's wrong with me. And that can really push things a little bit further to that negative side, that hopelessness side, versus actually engaging in the feeling of that kind of hopelessness or that depressive anxiety state. But I promise that you know your child best. You know their usual patterns. Now, your child may not agree with you knowing them best, or they may not agree with you knowing their usual patterns, but you are aware of their common reactions to frustration, challenges. What do they get mad at? What do they get upset with? What are those hot spots? What are those things that can just literally suddenly take your day from everything was fine to suddenly we're in turmoil, or we are going and shutting doors, or we're isolating, or we're not talking, or we suddenly just don't know what to do with each other. As a parent, as a guardian, as an adult, trust your instincts. If their behavior goes beyond the usual patterns, if it's going beyond that, hey, I knew when I said that they were going to respond this way, or I knew that they had told me they didn't want to talk about that, we need to talk about it, but they don't want to talk about it. Those are those usual patterns. But when it goes to an extreme, or when the verbal aggression, or when that physical aggression or the isolation goes further, that is really that alert that things have gone beyond, okay? The responses and the reactions that you're going to get based on their usual patterns, taking that step forward, it really could just be, as it mentions in my PowerPoint, but it could just be that tip. It could literally be just that little bit of something that if you don't key into it, or if you don't quite catch it, listen, it's okay. It's not reaching a crisis mode, but you want to be aware, and you want to be noticing it, and you want to get yourself very involved in, hey, I've noticed this change. I'm going to trust that there's this change, and how can I address it? If their sleep, if their appetite, if their motivation, if their mood, if their frustration aren't bouncing back. So again, we're not seeing that trend go, okay, we had a tough day, or we had a tough weekend, or oh my gosh, what is going on? These past couple of weeks have just been awful. I don't know what to do with my kiddo. I don't know why they're doing this. Those are those moments that as they start adding up without resolution or without a change, you really do want to then possibly start taking those steps to see a pediatrician. Maybe it's time that, I know even for myself, it's been that recommendation of, hey, maybe it's time to do lab work. Like, how often do we do lab work if you don't need lab work? Maybe it's time to really have that conversation with somebody other than my parent, or other than that person that I usually talk to. Well, now it's somebody that's in the clinical field or somebody in the medical field. It's just that kind of arbitrary party at first. So it can be a good thing for our kiddos and for ourselves. I love this quote as far as do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. I can only do so much based on the knowledge I have or the experience that I have. So again, as a parent, we were not handed, I mean, if anybody was, please let me know, but I was not handed the instruction manual of how to raise kiddos. And even in my work with kids and teens and tweens, there's not an instructional book. There's not a 1-800 number I can call and say, hey, tell me what I need to do. How can I set reset on my kiddo? There's not that. But just know, as a parent, as an involved adult, you are doing the best you can. And for those of you that are in this tonight with me, again, hopefully you're going to walk away with just a little bit more of a knowledge or a basis, or maybe it's just going to be a validation of, all right, I got this. This can be a good thing. How can you talk to a child about mental health and suicide? That's like the $1 million question, right? The biggest thing I would say, and even in preparation of doing this speaking, this is the hardest topic for me to speak on as a professional, because again, I don't have the cookie cutter. I don't have the version for people. But what I can tell people is don't be afraid to have the conversation. Ask your child how they are doing. If they give you a, I'm good, I'm fine, take it further. Ask what is happening in their world. Hey, can you tell me about what your day looks like? Hey, can you tell me about, you were mentioning the other day that teacher, or you were mentioning that you were thinking about maybe that you want to get involved in this class or this activity, or, you know, I've really noticed you doing this more. Keep it positive, but really put it in perspective of what's going on in their world. Ask what concerns they have. Be forthright. Be very upfront about, you know, are you stressed? How do you feel about? And then be very specific about how do you feel about going out? You know, how do you feel about everything that's going on in the world? We've had so many things happen. How are you feeling? What are you taking away from some of these experiences that we're seeing and engaged in ourselves? Asking simply, are you okay? Now, about 95% of teens and tweens are going to tell you, yeah, I'm okay. Leave me alone. Or they're going to walk away. That's okay. That has to be okay too. But you at least want to engage in that conversation and make sure that you're opening that door for those questions. The most important takeaway from each of these statements is you are putting the focus on them. It's not about how I'm feeling or commenting, I'm concerned about you, I'm worried. It's not I statements, it's they. It's about them, okay? We struggle with this as adults But we want to be able to listen intently and without judgment. Ask open-ended questions. Try our best. I'm not even the best at it, and this is my career. But we want to avoid the questions that can simply be yes, no. If they say something and maybe you feel it goes against your family traditions, your family norms, your belief systems, your cultural preferences, a lot of those factors, I absolutely understand. And that can be the hardest thing to hear as a parent, is your child say something that may not fall in line with what you want them to say, right? But we have to do our best to not pass the judgment. Accept what they're saying, acknowledge what they're saying, and really appreciate what they're saying. Resist the urge to offer quick fixes or solutions to challenges. Make sure we validate their feelings. I know that for myself, being very transparent as a clinical person, but even again as a parent myself, I'm solution. I want to fix it. So if a child comes to me and says, Miss Leslie, I'm feeling this way and this is what's going on, and I don't know what to do, the first response can often be the urge to go, listen, if you do this and this will help, and this can help solve this, and if you just try this, and if you do this, and I read this book about. We've got to resist that, because really at this point in a conversation with our teens and tweens, they're simply starting to open up to us. They are simply opening up that dialogue, and they are really, really looking for how we're going to respond to that. The more that we are open and we respond with, tell me more, I want to know more about that, validating them, that is going to continue the conversation. And then it can lead to more of that dialogue in regards to how we feel versus how they feel, and getting that conversation going. Should I use the same approach with different ages? So clinically speaking, we consider tweens between the age of 8 to 13. My 13-year-olds do not like to be called tweens, so I'm cautious with that term. They are 13, so that makes them a teen. But teens are then considered about 13 to 17 years old. To be completely open and honest with all parents and participants in this session tonight, the approach is going to be very similar. But we have to remember that talking to an 8-year-old is going to be much different than talking to a 17-year-old. And so it's going to be the language and the words and the vocabulary that we use. It is going to be, as noted, we have to consider the level of sophistication and self-awareness of the youth that we are talking to. We want to make the language that we use make sense to our child. We want to really approach it as with some of our younger, I note in here, but we oftentimes some of their manifestations related to their mental wellness, thoughts of suicide, thoughts of harm, they might not use that word. They might not even have that word in their mind, to be honest. But it's going to be that they may manifest that into physical symptoms. I don't feel good. My body hurts all the time. I just want to go to sleep and never wake up. I don't want to go to school. People don't like me. People don't care about me. People aren't nice to me. It becomes manifestations of other things versus it being, I feel this way. I'm having thoughts of doing this, or I'm having thoughts that I would be better off. Okay. But older kiddos, if they've been exposed to it, if they do know the term, which I know is a rarity as far as between social media, movies, dialogues, books, things, just environmental exposures. It's unlikely that our older kids will not have some sense of the word and the meaning, but really, if you're hearing them talk about it, just even nonchalantly, so again, not using the word, but talking about, I just can't do anything right, I don't even know why I try, it becomes the hopelessness conversation or dialogue. And so with that conversation, we really want to approach it from the direction of, tell me more about your thoughts and feelings. Why do you feel that way? Why do you feel that you can't do anything right? Why do you feel that you should no longer be here? Or why do you feel that there's no point? Or, in my own experience, it's always really interesting to me when I meet a teen or tween that is very existential. They have grand ideas about things, and they have really deep personal feelings about life and just the purpose and the feelings. And we want to, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, we want to validate that. We want to identify, what are they saying and what are they meaning? You do, as a parent, I would highly recommend, as an involved adult, I would truly engage in a conversation to find out more when they do either use a term, or they do start talking about, or they may address death, or they may actually use the word suicide. I would really encourage people to open up that dialogue to, as difficult as it sounds, what does it mean to you? Because what you may find is their definition or their understanding of the term, while we think of it very black and white and concrete, it may not be that black and white and concrete to them and what they are trying to explain to you. What if they don't want to talk? This is a big one, and this happens even in the professional world. If a child is not ready to talk, leave the invitation open. Don't shut the door. Don't force it. Open it up to the dialogue of, whenever you do want to talk, I'm here. I want to listen, and I want to support you. Let them know, I've already mentioned it earlier, but make sure they really do know that you are there to not judge, you are there to be supportive, and that you want to be a part of the solution. You want to be a part of it. And I say solution, you want to be a part of the outcome, the good outcome, right? Don't let it become the negative outcome. You want to be a part of that solution. You want to be a part of that journey with them. The likelihood that a child will open up is going to be when you least expect it. Oftentimes, even in a clinical world, we do not get the best information when we're actually going through and talking one-to-one with a student, patient, our own children, face-to-face. It's going to be when you're in the car. It's going to be when you have just turned on the TV and you're just thinking, okay, we're just going to chill out. Everything's good. It's going to be when they sit there and say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And you might be in 1,000,001 different things. Take that as that indicator. Take that as that branch going, oh, they want to talk. They're ready. They might be ready to talk. When your child does start to open up, if they start to open up, be careful again not to fall into the trap of jumping in with a solution or by saving it, right? You should just do this, or you should do this, or why didn't you come to me sooner? You want to be the listener and not the person that's going to suddenly solve things. What if you're concerned about that your child is thinking about suicide? Let's say that you're stuck in the hole. They're not talking to me yet. They're not ready to open up in this conversation. Just be aware. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, you know your child best. You absolutely know your child best. If your child is thinking or talking about any level of distress, don't hesitate to talk. Don't hesitate to ask them about what's going on, how you're feeling, things like that. One of the best things that I've ever heard for myself to validate my own work, but also as a parent, is asking your child directly about suicide is not going to increase the risk. It is not going to plant the seed. It is not going to plant the idea. It's going to create the opportunity to offer support. That's really hard to hear, but it is. By being direct, you are likely going to have a better outcome in the conversation than by tiptoeing around it or not saying what you really want to ask or say. You can say things to, different ways to say things are going to be, can you tell me more about that? I want to understand more about your perspective. I'm going to keep supporting you. So again, validating. Talk to your child about how to seek help. But again, be the person that's going to drive the help. Be the person as the adult that is going to really drive what may be best for your child. Reach out to friends, reach out to your schools, reach out to all these people that are very, very supportive and very, very interested in providing that support, right? You're not a bad parent, you're not a bad adult. Oh my gosh, I didn't see the warning signs and now we're here. My kid doesn't want to go to therapy. My kid doesn't want to talk to a counselor. It can look help can look very different, I guess is the best way to say it. This is a great inspiration that I think that we can often share with other people in regards to how we support how important we are, right? I am Leslie Meeks. I am the only Leslie Meeks that is me. Every student, every patient, every child that has come into my life, they're the only them, okay? So I always take this away, and we often share this with many of our own students and those that we treat within our program. But as a reminder, our story is a tragedy at times. It's a comedy some days, a drama, safe to say. We will find things and lose things in life. There will be awesome starts and awful endings. But we need to keep going because the part you play is sacred. We are the only people, okay? We want to remind our kiddos, we want to remind anyone in our lives that they are the only yous, they are the only thems, and we absolutely are here to support them, love them, and help them through. And we are the only us's, okay? So we are the only people. Life is messy, life is hard, and again, no one has the exact answers, but the best form of communication is going to be direct and talking through these really challenging and difficult subjects. So this is a great little takeaway. Like I said, we often share this to remind kiddos, especially if they're having that hopeless, if they're feeling that they don't matter, if they feel that they're not important. They are, because they're the only one. They're no one can recreate me. I get this life, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. So resources, and I know my colleague Andrea that's with me, I know that she's very, very involved with this. But in regards to one of the greatest resources out there, and I've made sure to include the web page and things like that. The Jason Foundation is a great resource. If you visit their webpage, they have wonderful resources for anything and everything within the community, local support, lots of really up-to-date information, ways to seek help directly for not only parents, but for our community members, for youth. It's a great kind of one-stop. And I hate to kind of say it that way, but I know sometimes we can get really lost in Googling and looking things up and going through different venues to try and find an answer. The Jason Foundation is a fantastic resource, in particular for suicide education, awareness, different programs that are available. So I highly recommend to every parent, every leader, every guardian, anything. If you work with kiddos and you work with youth, this is a great foundation to really look into more. And then in our technological world that we are in right now, one of the greatest things too that is offered through going to the Jason Foundation, there is a wonderful app that's now available that is referred to as a Friend Asks. This is a great smartphone app. I believe it's also available on tablets, but it's a great, again, so many of us are glued to our phones. Our kids sometimes are glued to our phones. They're more comfortable. Again, going back to the, hey, I'm not ready to talk to anybody. This is a great resource that, again, it's not getting false information. It's not seeking anything that's going to lead them to anything that's going to suddenly be like, oh my gosh, what did I open the door to? It is a great app for anyone to really identify and address warning signs of suicidal ideation, how to help a friend, how to get help. And then, of course, I always want to reiterate for people that we really, really want to make sure if it's an immediate crisis, call 911. Listen, there's not a wrong reason to call. If you see someone in crisis, whether it's your own child, whether it's someone, whether, hey, I know that somebody's at home and they're in crisis, or I just got this awful text message, or I think my kid might be talking to this kid and that something's going on. Listen, the best thing we can do is engage and get help right away when it's needed. And then I do think it's important for parents, community members, everybody, even for our own children, to know that there are hotlines and there are even text lines now, which again, we live in a technological era. But again, it's a reaching out. It's not to be secretive among parents. It's not to be something that, oh my gosh, I didn't know my kid did this. It can actually be a very valuable resource and an ability, again, for our children and our youth to open that conversation. So I know that that's a lot of information to take on. And I know that this is, we're getting towards the end of the presentation this evening. So definitely want to open it up. So Anne or Christy, as far as with any questions or with any comments that I can assist with.
Yeah, we had a lot of great questions come in on the chat, and those of you, I appreciate your patience for me saying, hold on. So I'm going to go back to the first one. The question was, does playing too many video games contribute to depression that can lead to suicide?
I will say that clinical research, as well as just my own experience working with teens, children, things like that, I would highly suggest monitoring the appropriateness of what games, what activities kiddos are engaging in. Does it lead to, or does it encourage, or may it increase depression? It definitely can play a part because, again, if it's death or violence, if it's a lot of graphic nature kind of things, even if it's pretend, I know some of these games, I mean, it's mythical characters, I guess is the best way for me to say it. It can become real for our youth. So I would definitely suggest monitoring it. We do find that gaming or doing excess in those kind of activities can also be leading towards that isolation that I mentioned earlier. So that's a way for them to isolate and not have personal interactions.
Great. One of the other ones we have is someone has brought some concerns to another adult about their child that have been brought to their attention, and the parent's response is that, oh, this is just the teen years, and it sounds like this friend might be a little bit more concerned and wanted to know, what should I do then?
Ooh. Okay, and that's a great question, so I really appreciate it, and we face this question a lot. If you feel, I'm trying to think of the best way to respond to this, but if you feel that based on the information that you have been given, that and you shared it with the other parent, you shared it with the other friend, you've really addressed it adult to adult, or maybe you haven't, like sometimes we don't have that relationship. How do I approach this person that I don't really know? That can happen too, as far as with what's going on. I would definitely suggest utilizing potential other tools that may be in your adult toolbox, in regards to if this is something that maybe can go through the school personnel, or if this is something where, again, if there's a safety risk, an imminent risk, and I didn't cover that very much in this time frame, but if there's an imminent risk, then again, there are a lot of community services as well. I don't want to high alert anyone, so I apologize. But there are different things through our police departments or our different community systems that can help support concerned parties. So again, whether that's a parent of another child, whether that's a teacher, whether that's anything, there's definitely some resources available for that. But definitely don't want to just ignore and then kind of take that on yourself.
Great. What is the recommendation for a teenager whose friend sends messages about her thoughts of suicide? What is the right protocol for notification? What if the parents of that friend have been notified, but the messages are continuing? It's a huge responsibility and burden for the kid who's getting the messages and wants to make sure we're worried about the pressure. I know we have several reporting. We have Speak Up, our anonymous reporting app in the district that students' parents can utilize to report concerns they may have about a student or a friend of their children. And also Katie Connect is our personal hotline, crisis line that is on the back of every secondary student's ID badge. And those are two great resources in district, but just Leslie, if you can speak outside.
So absolutely, and I will vouch for KDISD. You are in the right direction with everything that you have available for the safety of teens and all of our students here. One of the things I would definitely suggest, and this, trust me, I deal with it on the teen side of it on my end, is parents, please, please, please know what your children are logging into. So we often do hear that kiddos are receiving text messages. Block the numbers. Take control of that for your own child. And again, for this, and I say that not to nullify or ignore the concern of that other student, but take those steps, as Anne already mentioned, as far as to maybe like address some of the concerns. But for your child's safety, that can be a traumatic experience to continuously get messages. But as I also know, sometimes these messages are coming through the other social media accounts. So your Instagrams, your Facebooks, your things like that. There's a whole lot more than I'm probably even aware of. It is in your child's best interest for you to take control of that and really make sure that there's privacies, there's blocks, there's things like that, because it really can become more of an aggressive and really traumatic experience for the student that's receiving the messages. There's a lot of guilt and shame that can be associated to that.
We have, what are great techniques that can be used to ensure a child that he or she is special, no matter how they feel about themselves? I'm going to go back to the theory of you know your child best. We all have a language that works best for us. Some kiddos appreciate hearing it more. Now, they may roll their eyes, they may still walk away from you, shrug those shoulders. Yeah, I know you think I'm smart and I'm great and I'm wonderful. But they at least can accept it and hear it, right? Now, some kiddos respond better to, and just a few ideas. Putting that Post-it on the mirror, or put the note in the backpack, saying, hey kiddo, today's gonna be a great day. Hey kiddo, I'm so proud of you. Just wanted to let you know. Really, you're gonna know best as a parent, but those are definitely recommendations that I have. Sometimes it's best to use all the techniques and see which one your kid grabs onto too. I think another really great technique that I know can be kind of hard for us at times, especially if we have maybe large families, we're super busy, just things like that.
and this is going to sound backwards, so I apologize, but really forcing that one-to-one attention with your child. So again, they may sit in your car and have their phone out and have their things like that. But as the adult, I think engaging in that conversation of, hey, you know, I just really wanted you to know that I'm proud of how you handled this. Really be direct and specific with them in regards to their being special, their being unique. You never know when it's going to latch on, but I think using verbal, nonverbal, and environmental changes to really approach it are great methods.
Okay. How much time for video games is an excessive amount of time for an 8-year-old child?
Ooh, 8-year-old. Okay, I know this one all too well because I've got an 8-year-old at home as well. So I can't speak on, or I don't feel confident in speaking on like what is the exact amount of time. But here's my approach to it is we as parents need to set forth expectations of what needs to be done. Maybe that's chore related, homework related, snack time, dinner time. I mean, it can be anything. What are some day-to-day expectations that have to be met before they can have that time? So, you know, so again, having the expectation set, hey, you can have 30 minutes on your video game tonight if you've done A and B. On the weekends, I know that's when you're like, ah, man, as a parent, you're like, listen, they want to play on the video games. Maybe extend it a little bit more, but again, a good modeling is going to be to have those expectations set before they're allotted that kind of reward. And I would highly suggest, given my own experience in this field, be cautious to allow them to use it as a coping mechanism, because the coping mechanism is actually their way of isolating. So if they say, I'm just really upset right now, I don't want to do this, I just need to go play my video games, that's actually usually a red flag of, there's something else going on. Because if they're mad and upset and then want to go play maybe a violent game, or it may not even be violent. I mean, it could be Minecraft, it could be anything. But I would highly suggest that you use caution and have an expectation set before they're allotted that time. Reasonably, I would say, just given my own knowledge, typically for 8-year-olds, you don't want to you don't want to kind of exceed maybe 60 minutes of time in any given period. You want to have breaks, and you also don't want to allow it for it to become an extension of a longer period of time.
Okay, we got 2 more, and I know we're wrapping up on time. My daughter and I, tried to prevent a suicide by calling the anonymous hotline, and the person still completed suicide. How do we deal with the guilt feeling and feeling like the services do not work? My daughter is only 15.
Oh, that I wish I had an easy answer for it. I'm gonna be completely transparent. There's not an easy answer for it, because unfortunately, given the experience of being a person that reported it and used tools, and unfortunately still the result was that this person still ended their life, there is a process and a sense of guilt associated with that will need to be worked through, and it's not going to be an easy process. And there's not an easy answer on the other end either, in my opinion, that, you know, you did exactly what anybody would tell you to have done, and now it is that feeling of the system failed me. Did we fail this friend, this student, this person in our life? Things happen, and that's not to be nonchalant about the actual issue. Things happen, and the hardest thing for any of us to do is try to find the answers for why they happened. But I would definitely suggest, for not only you and your child being 15, definitely attempting to work through it, talk about it. But know that regardless of the steps that were taken, the outcome, again, there's no way of looking back and going, would the outcome have been different? And that's a really unfortunate thing to have to deal with. But just know that, and I'm sharing this as a personal level, the fact that you took the steps and addressed it are huge.
Absolutely. What do I do when a teen is showing suicidal risk factors but are not willing to go to professional help? The mentality is that therapy is for mentally ill people with no cure and feel like if they go, they are sick people.
That darn stigma of mental health, right? Okay, so this is my whole passion. Great question. And this has probably been the many hours of my argument sitting with teens and tweens about this, right? Feeling a certain way, thinking certain thoughts does not make you sick, doesn't make you crazy. And no person is exactly like the other person. So I would highly recommend that, again, even in these cases, we as adults have to be the adult, and we have to be the authority in it and say, you do need this and you will benefit from it. Now, I'm also very transparent, and even with my own population, is you may not like the first service that you try. You may not like the first therapist. You might not like the first person that reaches out to you. You might not like me when you walk in the door. But luckily, you may not have to deal with me very much. You may have to deal with somebody else. As parents, we're going to have to be ready to kind of have that experience with our teens, accept what they like and what they don't like. But we have also got to be a part of that conversation and know what we want for our child, and really work with whatever team. Whether that's the schools, whether that's outpatient programming, whether that's a personal therapist or treatment program, we're going to have to be the ones to really speak up and speak out and encourage it. And trust me, as professionals, I will tell you that, listen, defiance does not surprise me. Defiance does not bother me. And I have seen many a defiant child come in and say, you're not going to help me at all. Cool, not a problem. Tell me more about that. And you engage, and you can work through the defiance.
And Leslie, I think we got one more. We're close.
Okay.
Last question. For a parent who has open dialogue with their children, tries to be involved as much as they can with their day, know who their friends are, what apps are allowed on devices, even block content. If we're still seeing things that are concerning regarding self-image, at what point would you consult a professional? What direction would you point that family?
If it's more of that self-image, that self-worth, it is. And bless all of us parents that are super involved as well. And we try, right? We try so hard. It's going to reach a point that if it's literally, depending on their age, but if it's hindering their ability to maintain health and wellness, meaning whether that's like healthy, actual like hygiene and body and overall health, if it's hindering their ability to actually go out and socialize, that actually can be an underlying symptom of a more aggressive condition, whether it be generalized anxiety, again, not a bad thing, but something that may need further needs assessment. And again, even just addressing it through a pediatrician first. Oftentimes pediatricians are a great start in that, and they can get you hooked up and linked up with a really good mental health professional as well, if that's the need.
Great. Thank you so much. And just really quick, I know Lisa Askins asked, she showed a 7 p.m. start time. I'm sorry about that. It's we actually started at 6, but this is recorded and it will be posted on the Legacy Parent Academy website, as well as contact information and resources for the presenters, for resources in the district that you can access. So if you have any questions, Ms. Askins, you can certainly reach out to us then. And I'll turn it over to Christy. Chrissy, you're not coming through. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and wrap it up and say thank you to Leslie, thank you to Andrea, thank you to all of you for coming. Again, all of this information will be posted on the Legacy Parent Academy website with a Spanish translation coming as well. Thank you, Leslie, again, and Andrea, for all that you do for our students in the community, and we appreciate your time and hope everybody has a great evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone that was on the call tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Really appreciate your time and your interest.